Today, video games are everywhere, so it might be hard to understand my generation's obsession with Atari. But for us, it was the gateway drug to a lifelong addiction to video games. And then one day, it was just gone. Sometime in the mid-'80s, it just disappeared, and there were no more Atari games. And I always wondered what happened. Where did it go?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to DaveyJay today. I'm your host, DaveyJay. Nice to see you again. Glad to have you back to the show. Today we're going to do something a little interesting. It's much different than what we're used to. We're going to be doing an unboxing, but it's not your typical unboxing. Let's just say I found garbage, and quickly thereafter I realized this isn't just your normal trash. This is treasure. What? We're going to open that up right here on DaveyJay today. Coming up next. For now, run that intro. Let's get this motherfucker! Davey.
So this is the famous landfill, the burial, the final resting ground of E.T.
Yeah, this is the place. This road here, this gate, this is exactly the way the Ataris would have came through that ditch and up through here. It was the only access in. Back in those days, it was just pure desert.
And is there any way to get through this, or
Well, yeah, it's a high security gate. So,
tuck under, yeah, I guess that works.
Joe Landowski has been the garbage guru, if you will, for a number of years. He operated various waste disposal companies within Alamogordo and Otero County. And when it comes to the Atari graveyard, I believe he probably has more direct knowledge than anybody else.
Joe's the guy that's advising the city and telling the city where everything is. And I think that he's the only guy that might be able to walk out to that dump and point to a spot on the ground and say, this is where it's at.
So this whole area, this is where it's buried?
some people don't believe it's there, but trust me, it's there.
You can kind of feel it, right? Is that just me?
It's pretty much you.
It's just me.
We got Atari right here, and we're feeling good today. Welcome back to the show. We're going to do an unboxing today, as I explained earlier, but this is a strange unboxing. It requires a little bit of backstory, so we're going to tell you a little bit about that. Obviously, it has something to do with Atari. So, in order to understand what we're opening on the show today, we have to talk about a small desert town in the middle of New Mexico called Alamogordo, New Mexico. Yes, the city of Alamogordo has a lot to do with today's unboxing because they have a beautiful garbage dump. Yeah, just lots of trash for miles and miles right smack in the New Mexico desert. And what does that have to do with Atari? How strange. I know you're looking at me like, cool graphic on the TV there, Davey, but what are we opening? Well, we're opening a video game. For what system? No, not the most popular Atari system, the Atari 2600, although Atari 2600 is definitely part of our story today. We're opening tennis. Yeah, that's right. It's called Real Sports Tennis for the Atari 5200 system. Yeah, have you ever played tennis for Atari? I haven't played a lot of tennis games in general. Jeez, I think the last tennis game I played was like 10 years ago, and it was Virtua Tennis for Dreamcast. In my opinion, tennis video games have always kind of gotten a bad rap, so it's no surprise why this tennis game ended up all the way in the Alamogordo Desert dump. Now, in the mid-70s, the only way to play a video game was going to an arcade. There were no home consoles yet. And I know it's pretty hard for most people to understand, but yeah, you had to go to places like arcades, a pizza restaurant, or, the spaghetti shop to play pinball, to play coin-op games like Asteroids. And then they were like, how could we port these classic games that most people play when they're out at the arcade to an affordable console that people can bring into their homes? And so they engineered all these excellent games, and they brought them to what was then called the Atari 2600, which was so innovative for not just video game players, but it was like the first computer system, basically, that you brought home. And it was so innovative, and it became so popular overnight. Everybody wanted to get their kid an Atari system in Christmas 1978. So they were the only video game system on the market at that time. And they blew up, selling millions and millions of consoles and copies of video games. and it seemed like it would never end until 1982, when the CEO made a few terrible business choices, and then all of a sudden...
On December 7th, 1982, I get a call from Dennis Groth, who was the CFO of Atari, and he says, "Manny, here's the new budget." And it's a huge shortfall from what we had been told.
Warner Communications said today that its once booming Atari business lost another $180 million in the third quarter, for total losses this year of more than $500 million.
I was starting to see enough signs in the company that things were starting to unravel.
It was unraveling hard and fast, and we didn't have any ready solutions.
Several Atari executives, including Atari's chairman, Raymond Kassar, sold Warner stock shortly before the negative earnings announcement and the decline in the price of the stock. Kassar denies any wrongdoing or impropriety, but a number of stockholders have sued Warner.
Atari went bankrupt. And when Atari went bankrupt, they had all this overstock in all these distribution centers, the one of which we're going to speak of is in El Paso, Texas, I believe. This Atari distribution center was in Texas. It had a bunch of sealed video games, a bunch of accessories, joysticks, video game systems, games for the 2600, games for the 5200, and one of which was E.T. Now, E.T. became one of the most sold games ever, but it was also one of the most returned games of all time. So what does that tell you? A lot of people didn't like the game, and it just kept coming back, so they had all this extra stock. Obviously, with the company going bankrupt, all the extra accessories, sealed video games, were basically shipped over to the New Mexico desert to a city called Alamogordo, home to a very large garbage dump, and they were buried about 60 feet underground. And to make sure that nobody would ever dig it up, they put a slab of concrete over it. So yes, it's true. There's a bunch of video games and video game accessories at the Alamogordo dump. So over time, what happens is there's a huge myth. People are like, oh, there's millions of copies of E.T. and millions of copies of games out in the New Mexico desert, and it was passed on from grandparents to their uncles to aunts to cousins, and friends of friends would talk to people, and even people in Europe and South Africa and China and people all over the globe were all of a sudden discussing this Atari legend. And the legend was that there's millions upon millions of games buried in the New Mexico desert, and it just sounds so ridiculous. How could it possibly be true? You're trying to tell me there's millions of video games just out in the desert for the taking?
I'm in favor of the Atari games being dug up because it is the largest myth in the gaming world.
I believe that Joe just thinks it'd be an outstanding event for Alamogordo and a way to get us on the map.
On Tuesday, Alamogordo's City Commission approved a deal to dig in the old landfill within the next 6 months.
The city has given its okay, and now the state has given them approval.
Film crews will be in Alamogordo.
The documentary film crew will start probing the dump for their strange buried treasure at 9:30 a.m.
They spent most of the day looking for mail or old garbage with the exact date. They were looking for, I think it was October 1983. And finally, they found a piece of mail from that time within days of when they knew that they dumped all the Atari video games out there. And then
we found something. The archaeologists have confirmed it's from 1983, 28 feet down. It's E.T. the video game, intact in its box.
It's an emotional event. They backed up this legend with fact, and it's incredible to be a part of it.
People made this pilgrimage from all over the world. There were authors, celebrities, wives, husbands, cousins, family, friends, Microsoft executives, Sega executives, people who worked for Xbox. There were people that worked for Apple and people that came from Europe and all over Africa, China, Japan, all over the globe, to come to the small town of Alamogordo, New Mexico, to see the excavation of all these classic Atari video games. It's not surprising that one of these video games ended up going to the Smithsonian Museum. It was just a very important day in video game history. You know, I can tell you about this all day, but there's nothing better than the documentary called Game Over. I think they have it for free on YouTube, so if you really want to hear about this excavation and this Atari gold mine out in the middle of the desert, watch the documentary entitled Game Over. They explain a lot better than I do. I've kind of always known about the legend of the buried Atari games, and I've always wanted to buy one of these video games just to say I own a little piece of video game history. So I was scouring eBay the other day, and I came upon this seller, and it turns out that they're from Alamogordo, New Mexico, and they had a bunch of video games, trashed Atari games, some in the box, some just the cartridge, 5200 games. They had Atari 2600 games for sale. They all come with a COA. They come with a cool little plaque with a serial number on it, and I just thought it would be cool to unbox one of those just to have it in my collection. As you can tell behind me, I'm a huge collector of autographs mostly, but I also like cool artifacts, and I thought it would be really awesome to have one of these video games in my collection. So we're gonna go ahead and unbox one of these, and I'm obviously gonna wear gloves because let's be honest here, this is garbage, and I'm not trying to dig around in garbage with my bare hands. So we're gonna put on some gloves, and we're gonna open Real Sports Tennis for the Atari 5200 from the Alamogordo dig site. Let's get into it right now. This is how we do it. This is how we do it. Look at, yep, just like they do in the movies. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready for surgery? Boom. Okay, well, I want you to look at this first. Here. What does that say? Can you read it? Alamogordo. Alamogordo, New Mexico. Now, what's in Alamogordo, like we just discussed? That's right, the Alamogordo City Dump. That's where this garbage came from. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, let's do this. What's in here? Okay. Just pieces of paper. Okay. Okay, this is a file. Oh, this might be newspaper articles. Oh, there's tape? What's in here? Visit Alamogordo. Is this a map? Look at this. Visit Alamogordo, New Mexico. How cool is that? Let's see this here. Things to do. Alameda Park Zoo. Desert Lakes Golf Course. New Mexico Museum of Space History. I love space. I'm kind of a space geek. Anyways, that's cool. Cool literature. They have that in here. What do we have here? Oh, Certificate of Authenticity. Okay, City of Alamogordo, New Mexico. COA. Atari game, Real Sports Tennis for the 5200. COA serial number, COA 09396. Signed by Howard Scott Warshaw. And he was the programmer for so many great Atari 2600 video games. Two I can think of right off the bat is Yar's Revenge and of course E.T. the video game, which is on many people's top 10 lists for being the worst video game ever. Anyways, the mayor of Alamogordo, that's awesome, Susie Galea.
I'm in favor of the Atari games being dug up because it is the largest myth in the gaming world.
The City of Alamogordo, New Mexico seal. How about that? Oh, this is information just on the Atari tomb is what it's called. It tells you where it is, where the entrance to the landfill is. Gives you a whole history on it, the burial. Oh, look at this. This is from the newspaper articles from when they dumped out the Atari games. And if you want to zoom in and do that, I know it's 4K, so if you want to read that, go for it. Anyways. Now let's get to what we're all here for. Such a somber moment. Oh, look at that. It smells like garbage. Oh, cool, look at this. It's got a little plaque with it, with the serial number. Okay, maybe now you can see it, right? Okay, good. Property of City of Alamogordo. Well, property of me now. And like they said, they only unearthed like 2,000 of these games. A bunch of them were given to a museum. I know one of the E.T. video game cartridges in boxes were given to the Smithsonian Museum, of all places, so that's really cool. And I don't think this game would be playable because I'm feeling it right now. And it's pretty flattened. Let's take it out, see what's going on. I don't want to get rid of the dirt because I feel like... normally I'd get rid of the box, but I feel like the box... oh, it smells so bad. Anyways. That's why I wore gloves. There it is. And obviously it's split in half. It smells so bad, guys. Look at that. Underground for 30 years. Again, this is Atari Tennis for the 5200. It won't be a game if it didn't come with its own box, which it did. Or wait, yeah, no. Is this a box? Oh, you know what? This isn't even a box. This is just the instruction manual. I thought it was a box. Either way, that's cool. Cool. And the whole time I thought this was a box. This is an instruction manual, which is still awesome. Let's get a load of this. Oh. Match Point. I like how they have all these realistic like images in here, but the graphics were so terrible. Like, oh, here you go. Here's some stickers or whatever. Ugh. Ugh. It's just the worst smell ever. Anywho. Well, there you have it. So I think the next step will be to go ahead and buy a shadow box, kind of set this up, seal it so it doesn't smell bad, seal it up all nice, and just have it on display. Maybe have this cool little COA to display with it, because that is awesome. But yeah, that's what we have here. This is a video game legend, and it's completely unearthed right here for you guys on DaveyJay Today. And before we go, I have one more thing to say quick. Let's go back to you, Davey, live in the chair. Boom. Well, this gives true meaning to one man's garbage is another man's treasure. I want to thank you for watching my video once again. Just kind of going off the beating path a little bit, doing something different. And how much different does it get than opening old Atari smashed garbage dump video game cartridges? Now that's what I call thinking outside the box. Content you're only going to get right here at DaveyJay Today, because it represents so much. It represents the end of an era being Atari, because after Atari was gone, Nintendo took over. They were the new Atari, and they never let up. Nintendo's still dominant today. It's a cool relic of the past, and I can't wait to put it up on the wall, just to have it as a reminder that all great things do come to an end, and it's cool to have a little piece of video game history right up on my wall and in my collection. So that's all I have here today on DaveyJay Today. I've said my piece. Now it's time to hear yours.